2019. So I've been through, a lot of rough patches. It certainly hasn't been easy. There's been good times and there's been bad times. But more recently with multi-chain, obviously this is a very difficult situation. So let me comment on that a bit. First of all, multi-chain was a very well-known bridge. It was one of the first bridges in the space, and a lot of people were backing them because they had worked on this technology called MPC. Basically, it means multi-party control, and it is a real technology. And it was, as I understand it from Andre, became one of the standards for communication between different distributed ledgers or different blockchains, right? And so multi-chain became quite a big bridge. It was the first bridge to integrate with Phantom, I believe, or one of the earliest bridges. And it got a lot of investment. So at the end of December 2021, it had a $1.2 billion valuation. $60 million was invested to it by very well-known investors like Binance Labs, Sequoia, Circle Ventures, etc. And so it was definitely a legitimate project. But what happened recently with multi-chain, and I can share as much as I can, is that it appears that the team in China has been detained, essentially, and in particular, Zhao Zhen has been detained. And it turns out what we didn't know back then, and I think the same investors and other chains they integrated with didn't know back then, is that Zhao Zhen actually had personal cloud access to a lot of these servers that were actually validating transactions. So in other words, there was this individual who had this full control or majority control of the network, whereas our understanding was that it was the MPC nodes around the world that had kind of a majority control of the network that were confirming transactions, right? So that was a big shock to us that we only discovered literally in the past couple of weeks or so, or since the assets were kind of abnormally moved off the multi-chain system, right? And so had we known that there was this super privileged access that Zhao Zhen had access to, then perhaps we wouldn't have worked with multi-chain in the way that we did. And I'm sure that the other chains, because they integrated with more than 25 other chains, would have felt similar manner. I think what's also important to note is that yes, a lot of the TVL was bridged via multi-chain onto Phantom. That is true, but the majority of assets by far, I believe, that were lost by multi-chain did belong to many other chains that they integrated with, right? And so it wasn't just Phantom that was hit by what has happened with multi-chain, it's many other chains that are out there. That being said, based on talking to many different sources in China and corroborating what they've been saying, we do strongly believe that Zhao Zhen has been detained in Kunming, and which is a province in southwest of China, and that several other team members from the multi-chain team have been detained. And we're not exactly sure why they've been detained, but we strongly believe that they actually have been detained. And it might be the case that they've been detained because there's a project that used multi-chain to, that's been accused of not, being above board, of, being a scam or something like that. And maybe that's why they've been pulled in and detained under sort of certain suspicion, right? But what we're trying to do now is that we're working very closely with an Asian law firm that we know very well, that we previously worked with a few years ago, and they're putting out, and they're trying to get as much information as possible. So what we want to confirm first is, is Zhao Zhen actually detained? Is he detained in Kunming? Why is he being detained? And the second question is, how do we get the assets back? Because my understanding is that the assets are very likely to be held by the local government at the moment. Not exactly sure why they're being held, if it's under suspicion, if they suspect that it might have been used in, like a fraud or Ponzi and that sort of thing. But we need to make it very clear to the government that these assets, they're not Ponzi assets or anything like that. That these are assets that legitimately belong to foreigners, to individual users, for the Phantom chain, and also for the other chains that are out there. And so what we're really focused on at the moment is getting that confirmation from the police, and then wanting to, engage with them and put in a claim and explain to them very, very carefully why these assets that they're holding onto do not belong to multi-chain, and in fact, they actually belong to the individual users, right? And so it may be the case that we have to put in individual claims, or individuals have to reach out to the foundation, and then we, represent them with their permission in order to get as many of these funds back as possible. So that is like kind of like the current situation at the moment that I'm intensely focused on trying to resolve. But at the same time, the rest of the team continues their work, and we can talk about what the rest of the team is doing as well going forward. That I myself am very much involved in what's going on with the multi-chain situation, but the rest of the team is also involved in many aspects of developing the Phantom network going forward.